Well, Jeff, I'm excited to talk to you. Steve Severs for Bionic Buzz. Pleasure to meet you. Could you tell us a little about your background in the film and theater industry?
Yes, I have worked as a uh, teacher for many years, teaching uh, and what to some people sounds like an outdated concept, but the craft of the dramatist, which is really just how do you make a script work. And I came into it from a strange angle. Uh, I was working as a painter, and a friend of mine said that he was going to be teaching a playwriting course to another friend. And I said, oh, I'd love to be in that if I could. So he taught us the basics of Aristotle, and then he gave me two books to read, two old books on playwriting, and I sat down and read them for 3 years, which
Wow.
is a strange angle. But the the guy who I was reading was a top Broadway script doctor circa 1910, and he uh, knew a lot about how to make scripts work. And he had so many people asking him for advice that he started the first school of playwriting ever in the history of the world. And he had 28 students, and 24 of them had hits on Broadway. He had a lot to say, and it was very dense, and it took me multiple readings to absorb it all. And I ended up with some unique and powerful tools that are straight out of like the formal theory of how scripts work for centuries and centuries. But because he created some new tools, people keep saying they've never seen anything like what I teach, and that it works better than anything. So I just had a different take on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But from the beginning, I worked as a dramaturg in New York theater, uh, revising scripts for production. And then I was hired to teach playwriting on Broadway. And then my own interests drifted into screenwriting, and I started teaching screenwriting as well, and taught for many years in Hollywood. Taught small hands-on classes, maximum 6 people, so each person was working on their own script with me live. And I've taught development execs at all the major Hollywood studios, and they keep saying these tools are really extraordinary. They really address a lot of the things that we see on a daily basis. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, like one of the tools that works with reverse cause and effect, where once you've roughed out your story, you then start at the ending and work backwards.
Oh,
So you
wow.
start at the ending, you say, okay, well, what's the immediate cause of that happening? What's the immediate cause of that happening? And you stitch the plot together strictly by cause and effect, so that when you read it from the beginning, A causes B, which causes C, and so on, and you get a nice forward flow, which keeps the action moving ahead, and it also separates the necessary from the unnecessary, because as you're chaining backwards to what's the cause of that, that's what's necessary to advance the action. There may be other things that happen before it, but the thing that actually causes it is the necessary step in the forward flow. So the ability to separate the necessary from the unnecessary by creating this tight chain of cause and effect is very useful, because amateurs overwrite in every conceivable direction. And so when I'm teaching these creative executives at the Hollywood studios, uh, the reverse cause and effect and how it separates the necessary from the unnecessary, they're saying yes, the unnecessary kills scripts,
Oh.
because dialogue is overwritten, scene descriptions are overwritten, scenes that shouldn't even be there are in there, whole sequences might not even need to be in there, possibly a whole act. So the unnecessary is, if you don't know how to structure a plot properly, you end up with all kinds of unnecessary things. So the story doesn't advance well and everything is overwritten. It's like trying to take a brisk walk when there's 2 to 3 feet of snow on the ground. And so the development execs really loved the tools that I was teaching because it solved a number of issues like that. And so for many years, I've been one of the top rated teachers, and it's largely because I have substantial expertise in these unusual playwriting techniques is what it comes down to at the craft of the dramatist. How do you adapt a story for a theatrical presentation in film or theater or TV? Because it has to be actable and it has to grip an audience. And many amateurs don't grasp that. They think, well, I've got a dynamite story, so of course it'll make a good movie.
Yeah.
But it's a very distinct craft. It's a very distinct thing. Not every kind of airplane that you design will fly perfectly and reliably. So it's not just storytelling. You got to have great storytelling, and you have to have substantial craft as a dramatist. And then you can, if you have good stories and you can make them work, as a script that can be acted and grab an audience, then you've got what it takes.
Very interesting. What is the greatest misconception about script writing? I'm always curious about that.
Well, it's really that a good story will automatically make a good movie or TV show. And that goes back to what I was talking about, the ability to dramatize a story properly, because it's a very demanding medium. It's a very stripped down medium, because you're basically transforming story into action, because real actors have to perform it and they have to have specific actions to do. So whereas novel writing can be very like cerebral in a certain way, you could, like the movie On the Waterfront, the classic movie with Marlon Brando in 1954, was based on a novel, and in the novel there was 150 pages of internal monologue of the priest who was the Carl Malden character who was interacting with Marlon Brando in the movie. So in a novel, you can have 150 pages of internal monologue where the person is actually ruminating in themselves about how to figure something out, but that doesn't lend itself well to, theatrical presentation where somebody's on stage interacting with other people, usually in conflict. So there's a lot of specificity to what makes a story work as a script, as a performance piece. And so the biggest misconception is that I got a good story, how can it not work as a film or a TV show?
Very interesting. So I want to dive into your digital apprenticeship program, Script.Kitchen. You offer a
Yeah.
screenwriting mastery, high intensity training program for serious script writers. What are some of the benefits of your program, and how does it help writers in their career?
Well, what it does is that it is a professional level apprenticeship program in the craft of scriptwriting, in the craft of the dramatist, which is a mixture of being able to come up with a story that is substantial enough to make a film or a TV series or a Broadway play. Many people don't understand basically the story requirements for a movie. People go to the movies to have often a larger than life experience, and
Oh,
for
absolutely. I go.
depth and complexity. Yeah, it's part of it is pure entertainment value. Like you want to like have a peak experience, and certainly not all movies are intended to do that, and not all movies should do that. But by and large, many people go to the movies to have like a wild, fun time. So, you see a movie like Guardians of the Galaxy come along, and you're like, holy Moses, I needed that.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. I love that
I
movie.
remember I went to see that movie just because it was like a big tentpole movie, and I was like, I want to see what this is. And I got into it, and I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. I took my wife the next night. I saw it like 6 times in the theater when it was
Yeah,
out.
I
And
saw it 4 times in the theater. I loved it.
yeah, it's like this, I'm starving for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, just the idea that just pure entertainment value in and of itself is a huge factor. And the ability to tell a story well that works great on screen is important. And that goes back to the craft of the dramatist. So I really, and one of the things that uh, Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, who wrote Pirates of the Caribbean and a bunch of other stuff, they said the biggest single problem we see with scripts that don't work is that the underlying story is poor or weak.
Hmm.
And it's so true. People bring an idea for a movie that just does not have the juice to cut it. And they say that 95% of all first scripts are autobiographical,
Wow.
which, yeah, and people, it's like somebody sitting you down and making you watch home movies. Like, here we are in Egypt, and we had a bad hot dog that day, and we were climbing the pyramids, and my stomach was, and you're like, let me out of here. It's like,
Yeah.
and they're like, to them, it's the most fascinating thing. So just the ability to distinguish what interests you versus what might be fascinating to a large audience is a crucial skill as a storyteller. So you got to have storytelling chops as big as you can get them, and you got to have craft as a dramatist as big as you can get it. You really have to understand how to make a story work as a script.
Hmm.
And that's a lot of what I teach is I teach 7 tools, and we go deeply into all of them so that you can really master the the full and complete use of the tools so you get the maximum power.
Hmm.
The tools create certain distinctions. If you don't use them correctly, then you won't get their full power. Uh, and so it's largely a matter of, number one, them understanding the mechanics of the different tools that I teach. Um, like, for instance, the tools come all throughout the history of the study of what makes drama work. And by drama, I mean that it's a stage worthy presentation, that you can act it out. So a drama, in other words, when I use the word drama, it doesn't mean like some kind of heavy, intense, dramatic thing.
Hmm.
It's that if you're writing a brutal thriller or a whack job comedy, it has to work dramatically.
Hmm.
It has to be actable and grip an audience, so that, even a movie like Liar Liar, which is like hilarious and fun, it's still dramatically gripping. You're really on the edge of your seat. Like, can he somehow pull this off where he can't lie, but he's still trying to make everything work? And it's, just from how compelling it is, on top of how funny it is, it works dramatically. So the ability to make any story work dramatically is the center of the craft of the dramatist. So Aristotle noticed thousands of years ago that those dramas that grip an audience tend to have a good, strong dilemma. And a dilemma is being trapped between two equally painful choices, two
Uh,
equally unacceptable alternatives. Like, are you going to rat out your best friend or do hard time in jail yourself? Like, you can't rat out your buddy, but you can't go to jail yourself. Um, those kind of things where you're stuck between two equally painful choices, that's something that tends to make a story more riveting to an audience if a character has a dilemma of magnitude, of significance, of substance. And there's certain distinctions in how you use that tool. Excuse me. So for instance, like many people don't understand what a dilemma is. They think a dilemma is, I lost my car keys today. That's a problem. That's not a
Dude,
true
where'd my
dilemma.
car
And
go?
then, pardon?
They made a movie about that. Or, dude, where's my car?
Right. Uh, so there are certain distinctions in how you use the tools. Like if you are, if you've created a dilemma for your main character, but as you develop the dilemma, one side of the dilemma becomes an easier way out, so they're no longer equally unacceptable, then it's no longer a true dilemma because there's a path of least resistance. There's an easier choice. So the distinction is you got to make sure they're equally unacceptable. And then you create that paralysis in the protagonist where I can't choose in either direction, which makes it compelling for the audience. So that's an example of a distinction in the tool that if you don't use it right, you don't get its power. So I have to teach the mechanics of the tools, and then you have to learn how to apply it to a variety of script types.
Gotcha.
So in the training program, we have 6 to 8 scripts that we're actively developing at any one time. And one day we'll be working on a wacko comedy. The next day we'll be working on a horror film. The next day we'll be working on a brutal thriller. So we're constantly changing gears, and I'm constantly making the students use their brain.
Mm-hmm.
They've proven that the harder it is to learn something, the better it sticks.
Gotcha.
So if you have to really get in there and wrestle with it hard, and you really figure out how to do it in the process of that, you're going to go, oh, yeah, I see how valuable that is, and I really get it, rather than someone just talking at you going, you need to do this and this and this. So I try to challenge the students and make them work for it and change gears constantly and pull the rug out from under their feet. So they have to be agile and aggressive and independent. So we teach, because in a real screenwriting career, you don't get neat arrays of predictable problems that show up.
Mm-hmm.
It's stuff comes out of nowhere. So you have to really be able to think on your feet and recover your balance and know where you're at, and have such expertise in the tools that you're not even really consciously thinking about them. It's just built into you. So, it's like rigorous craft, but also flexibility and versatility and the ability to change gears and deal with the unexpected is built into the training. It's like being trained as a fireman, and they'll like literally set you on fire one day when you thought you were going to be in a classroom learning, CPR, because
Yeah.
they want to throw you in the deep end of the pool, because that's what's going to happen when the building collapses on you, and your buddy's under the rubble and you got to come up with something fast.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go, what do I do? Like, what to do.
Wow.
So it's an intensive hands-on experience, and it, it puts you through 7 powerful tools. So you're learning really diverse approaches to making scripts work, and starting something from a 1-sentence idea, building great characters, creating a gripping dilemma, building that to a make or break crisis, which forces decision and action in the face of crisis, and a substantial resolution to the dilemma. So there's highly specific techniques that help dramatize your story and keep it on track, keep it focused on the main character, uh, deepen and dimensionalize the character of that person, give them flaws and strengths and weaknesses and tendencies that make them more gripping and compelling and identifiable.
Mm-hmm.
And just a way to structure the conflict in an act and create tight cause and effect, make the overall story work, make each act work, make each sequence work, and make each scene work. so that you've got constant gripping dramatic action throughout, so you don't have spots in the story that are flat dramatically that lose the audience. You want to get them on the edge of their seat and always keep them there. There's a lot. It's a complex juggling act. Really, the way I describe it is that there's a broad spectrum of skills and abilities you have to have a consistent career as a scriptwriter. And it's multiple skills. And I compare it to learning how to juggle on a unicycle on a tightrope.
Oh,
And
wow.
you have to learn each of those skills independently. First, you got to be like a good juggler. You got to be able to just do that.
Hmm.
And then you got to just learn how to ride a unicycle. And you got to learn how to be on a tightrope. You learn each of those skills independently, and then gradually you synthesize those into a seamless, fluent functionality.
Hmm.
But it's similar in the apprenticeship program, where you're really learning a deep skills at complex, deep abilities at complex skills, and then you gradually synthesize them all into a fluent, seamless capability. So that's a look at what the apprenticeship program is. There's a 3-month program that gets you started, which can be, some people just take that 3 months,
Uh-huh.
and we build a complete script from scratch. They learn all 7 tools. If you want to take the 2-year program, then that's the introductory program that gets you up to speed on the tools, so that you can jump into the rest of the 2-year program, which is continuously ongoing. So once you've uh, learned the 7 tools and built a complete script with me in the 3 months, you can then jump into the ongoing 21-month program, where you might walk in on us where we're spending a week figuring out the ending to a romantic comedy. And because you've built a complete script with me for 3 months and you know the tools, you can follow what's going on and jump in and continue your training.
Hmm.
So it's a very like, get down in the dirt and really wrestle scripts into existence, and scripts of every genre. And some of them that we're developing are TV shows, some are films, some are even stage plays, where you're learning how to wrangle in any genre or medium. So it's really the craft of the dramatist, and to give you a kind of rough and tumble, I can tackle anything approach, so that when you get out into the real world, forging your career, you have really rugged and capable facility with
Hmm.
tackling scripts, executing them, and making them work.
Very interesting. So, you mentioned like a newbie coming on learning scripts. What if someone's like already written some scripts, gotten some movies made? Is there a way they can like benefit from your course, maybe to become even better a script writer, I would assume?
Yeah, I've taught a lot of beginners, and I've taught a lot of uh, mid-level writers who have serious skills but want more. And I've taught development executives at all the Hollywood studios. I've taught working professionals, because the tools that I teach are uh, powerful and distinct, and they they are in many ways outside what a lot of people are trained in film school or screenwriting courses, partly just because of these obscure playwriting books that I learned them from. They're mainstream, but they're not well known at all. So someone who has facility with script writing can gain more mastery, not just in their overall technique, but in highly specific techniques which hone different aspects of their writing process. So they're able to uh, outline better, create deeper characters, separate the necessary from the unnecessary, create more dramatic action. Dramatic action is not car chases and shootouts. Dramatic action is a state of action that you put the audience in, where you get them up on the edge of their seat, wondering how it's all going to get resolved, what comes next. So dramatic action really is the name of the game, because that's what dramatizing a story is about. That you can not only make it actable, but get the audience up on the edge of their seat. If they're not on the edge of their seat, then it's flat dramatically. So, and you don't want to have some sections of your script that have powerful dramatic action and some sections that have none, because then you lose the audience and that contributes to the script not working. So you want consistent, coherent, compelling dramatic action. You want the whole story to be unified, so there's one main action rather than a bunch of unconnected parts. And you want there to be consistent dramatic action, so the audience is constantly on the edge of their seats, to varying degrees, but they're always engaged. And so writers of varying degrees of skill come to me to really upgrade different areas of their skill sets that they want to have more stuff in. They maybe heard that I have a unique class and that the tools are extremely powerful. And development execs love it because it gives them enhanced ways to communicate with writers, enhanced ways to put their fingers specifically on scripts that have problems. Like when I worked as a dramaturg in New York theater, which is basically a script doctor, they would come to me and say, we're thinking of putting on this play, but there's something wrong with it, but we can't put our finger on what's wrong with it. So go take it apart and find what's wrong with it and figure out ways to solve that. And I'm good at that. And that's a skill that like a development exec at a Hollywood studio needs, because they'll read a script and go, okay, I like this, but there's something off about it. And the more that you're able to really put your finger on exactly what's wrong with it, that enables them to not only diagnose it better, and my tools are good at creating effective solutions as well, because most doctors can say, oh, you've got cancer, but not all of them can fix it for you, cure it. So these tools are good for both diagnostic and cure, the ability to create effective solutions. So not only can, instead of a creative executive at a studio saying, I love your script, but there's something wrong with it, but I can't put my finger on what's wrong with it. They can say, I love your script, but out toward the end of Act 2, it breaks down in a couple different ways. It's weak in this area, and this could be stronger. So the ability to diagnose weakness and strengths so you can fix the weaknesses and reinforce the strengths is good towards making something that is stage-worthy, that's producible. And the ability to just communicate with writers in a way that it's like a tactful way to say, like I was good at working with writers because I can say, here's what's weak about your script because of this, this, and this. And it's an objective analysis rather than saying, you're not a very good writer. I can say, you're almost there if you could solve this particular thing and this particular thing, and I have ideas for that. It would all of a sudden come up quite a bit. And I can also say, here's what's strong about your script. And if we can amplify that a bit more, like you correct the weaknesses and amplify the strengths, then all of a sudden you've got a much more robust script, and it's easier to sell. It works better as a production, and it makes them feel good as writers because there's substantial solutions and objective analysis rather than, there's something wrong with it, go figure it out. That's very hard on a writer because they put everything they had into making it work,
Yeah,
and they
exactly.
don't have any
Well,
objectivity anymore.
mhm.
So somebody just throwing it back in their lap and going, I don't know, go make it better.
Yeah.
That's really hard for a writer.
Oh, it's devastating.
Yeah.
They already did it. Oh, well, this was so fascinating. So thank you so much. Everyone go to Script.Kitchen where you can sign up for the course and get in contact with Jeff. Jeff,
Right.
thank
And
you
that's
so
the
much.
actual URL,
Yeah, exactly.
script.kitchen.
I had to like double check that. I was like, there's no .com, just Script.Kitchen.
Right.
Where'd you
I
come up with
often
that name?
listen.
That's a great name, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where'd you come up with Script.Kitchen, actually?
It was actually an advertising guy who's on my team. He's like, that's a killer name. And I was like, okay, I never thought of that. But yeah, it stands out. And
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom, for everything, for your script writing, for your many years. And yeah, everyone who's interested in script writing, please go to Script.Kitchen and get in contact. Thank you
yeah,
so
we've got
much,
a
Jeff.
3 month class you can jump right into, and a 2 year training program if you want to go all the way with it.
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. We'll talk down the road. All right.
Okay, thank you.